Hey everyone, today we're going to create an app from scratch using Conflux Scaffold. Conflux Scaffold is essentially an adaptation of ETH Scaffold 2, where we use some of the components such as the address, the wallet, to make really cool apps very quickly. So what you have here is what we're going to create today, where essentially we're allowing ourselves to set a greeting to be stored on the blockchain itself. So let's just get into it. We're going to create from very beginning, from cloning the repo from GitHub. So right now we're going to do git clone and clone the repo. We're going to do cd conflux scaffold to get into the folder. So in this folder, it's good to go through the folder structure first, where essentially we have a hardhat folder and a next.js folder. I'm going to go ahead and install the dependencies while I explain the folder structure. So the hardhat folder essentially allows you to work on your smart contracts and quickly compile and then deploy them. This is the deployment script. And then from a hardhat config ts, that essentially allows you to specify the compiler version, as well as the optimizer, as well as the networks that you're deploying the contract to. Here, the modification is we have added Conflux eSpace testnet, as well as the Conflux eSpace. We'll show you how to do it in a bit. But right now, what we're going to do is deploy it on hardhat so that we can play with the smart contracts within our computer, and then deploy it once we're satisfied with it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do yarn chain. This on a terminal essentially runs your own blockchain that is EVM compatible, allows you to essentially create new accounts to play around with. So we have essentially accounts that can be used as a faucet to provide us with funds. There's a public key here as well as a private key. We're going to create another terminal. So keep this terminal open because this is essentially running the blockchain. In this second terminal here, we're going to deploy the contract. So quickly, when we deploy the contract, remember, your deployment script essentially is deploying a compiler with 0.817, so that's what we have here. You can change that in hardhat config ts if you want to change the compiler version. So your contract right now has a few features such as withdrawal, set greeting, transfer ether. Whether from a constructor point of view, we're gonna allow the deployment person to be the owner. So this is a very simple contract. The initial greeting will be building unstoppable apps on Conflux. So we're gonna go ahead here and deploy the contract. So we're gonna do yarn deploy. With this yarn deploy, we're gonna compile the contract and then deploy it onto our hardhat side. So if we go back to the first terminal, the contract has been successfully deployed. We're going to open up another terminal here and essentially go to the front end side. So remember, hardhat is really for contract interaction. So when you change your smart contract, you can quickly deploy it. But the front end side, we're going to start up the front end because we want to see how our smart contract changes the front end when we deploy it. So we're going to go cd conflux scaffold, and we're going to do yarn start. Actually, we have to do mvm use 18 first to use node 18, and then we're going to do yarn start. So this starts up a localhost 3000 so that we can see the front end, and we can deploy new smart contracts and quickly see some of the functionality of that smart contract, and then link up our front end with that smart contract. So what we've done here is, in the debug contract side, we can quickly see this is the contract that we've deployed. You have your state building unstoppable apps on Conflux, the owner of who deployed it, and a counter. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to write a greeting. So let's just say test, or you know what? We're going to say Conflux is amazing. We're going to send this. It says does not have enough funds. So the great thing is, we right now is all within our computer. We don't even have to request testnet funds. Right now, we're gonna grab funds from a faucet. So we're gonna grab 1 ETH, which when we deploy on Conflux eSpace will be on CFX side. So also you can put in a faucet here where we can grab more. So we can, copy this address, put in the destination address, and we'll just give ourselves 100 ETH to play around with. And what we can do from here is essentially go back to the home side and see how this front end app connects with the smart contract. So this was built using some of the components on Conflux Scaffold, including, for example, this address here where you have this quick copy button, as well as features to condense it. You can look at the block explorer of what happened. So we have 1 ETH of faucet and then 100 ETH that was transferred over. I'm going to press this back button here. So there is a block explorer that you can see as well. And then from here, what we're going to do is see how this functionality works on the back end once we call these features. So in the Next.js folder here, what we want to go into is the app side, page TSX. So this is where we start editing the app, and we can edit the smart contract in the contract side of Hardhat. So if you wanted to, for example, redeploy a new contract, you can do this really quickly. So in contracts, your contract, what we're going to do is instead of saying building unstoppable apps on Conflux, we'll say on Conflux Scaffold, right? We're going to save this. We're going to go here and just say yarn deploy. Bam, we've deployed a new contract. And when we go into the block explorer, in our app itself, it says building unstoppable apps on Conflux Scaffold because this is a new contract that has been deployed, right? And so, as you change the Solidity file, you can see how some of these functions will be added here. Yeah, that's super powerful in terms of debugging your smart contract as well as seeing what your smart contract does. But let's go back to the front end. So remember, that's the Next.js folder. In the Next.js folder, you'll page.tsx. You can see that there are several hooks that you can immediately use. For example, use scaffold contract. The use scaffold contract here essentially connects the instance of the contract name, your contract, which is the contract that we've deployed. I'm going to quickly go into the console log here, which I've specified what it is. So it's an object here, which essentially you can see from the ABI the different functions that we have in our smart contract, including set greeting, view what the greeting is. So set greeting is a write function where you can write into set greeting what the new greeting will be, whereas greeting function is essentially just viewing what the current greeting will be. And you already have these pre-made hooks where use scaffold contract read here. All we need to do is something like this, where your contract name is your contract, function name is greeting, and we can use that data current greeting to display what the current greeting is in the blockchain of our contract. So the function name is greeting, and you can see here it's we'll put it into a string here and displayed it. So that's what is right here. Current greeting is building unstoppable apps on Conflux Scaffold. And when we change this, well, let's just say test, and change it. This makes transaction, sends it to blockchain, and changes our current greeting. And this current greeting essentially is calling the blockchain to see what it is. So that's the read function. Now we want to write into the function, which is what we did was when we submitted the test in this input side. So this test function, we have the argument of what we're submitting, which is a string, and we are saving that state into when whenever we change the form for input base. So input base is this thing right here, where the placeholder is greeting to be set. Placeholder is greeting to be set. So the value of this, when it's changed, will be saved and then sent to our function handle submit greeting, which essentially calls the function on the blockchain write async, which is use scaffold contract write. So go ahead and play around with this. Definitely look at the documentation as well, where the documentation has various things such as this nice beautiful component on address input. So for example, let's just say we want to send Conflux from one address to the next. What we can do is we can create a this beautiful bar by importing the component. So we're going to do this up here. We're going to just save this, and then we're going to save the state of the address. So we're going to create a new state, and then we're just going to add this component to the very bottom of our app here. So let's just put it here. So what we will see in our new app at the very bottom here is a address. So see this thing here, input your address. So there's a semicolon. Let's just remove the semicolon. Right. So this, as you can see, is already pre-made. You don't have to have any sort of time that you need to spend on kind of making this. You can, it's ENS sort of compatible. So let's just say we do vitalik.eth. Automatically that converts the public address that can be used. So very beautiful, where you have a lot of pre-made sort of components here. We're going to delete this, and then we're going to deploy our contract as is, just to show you how to deploy it. So now that you're familiar with this, I think it is now time to sort of link it with the Conflux aspect. So remember how we deployed it onto Hardhat? Right now our wallet is on Hardhat. We can change that. So we can change that from our front end. So from our front end side, we're going to do that in our config side. So let me just remove my face so it's easier to navigate. So on the pages, right? So we have sorry, I'm just gonna so scaffold config.ts is the file that you want to look at, where it has the targets chain. So once you're satisfied with your contract, we can essentially add the Conflux eSpace testnet and the Conflux eSpace. So when we save this and go back to our app on localhost 3000, you can see that when we connect our wallet, it has the option of being on Conflux eSpace or Conflux testnet or going back to Hardhat. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually deploy it on Conflux eSpace to see how it'll show up on the blockchain itself. So I'm going to go ahead and so I'm not going to show you the private key of the account I'm using, but essentially we need to replace this env example with just the .env. So we have to remove the .example and to put .env and then put our private key of the account that we want to use for deploying the contract. So I'm just going to drag this into this Hardhat folder. And then I'm going to go back to Hardhat. So this is the second terminal, if you remember. Say yarn deploy network and then Conflux eSpace. So what this does is instead of deploying the contract into Hardhat in your own terminal, we're going to go ahead and deploy that contract into Conflux eSpace itself. And we're gonna, once it deploys and has a smart contract address, we're gonna verify that with the Conflux eSpace itself. So we're on Conflux Scan. The contract has been deployed onto this address. We're gonna check the smart contract that we deployed. You can see that it was just created. Contract says you can verify your contract now. So that's what we're gonna do. So in Hardhat, under contracts, this is your contract. So we're gonna copy this, paste the source code. Your contract name was your contract. The license was MIT. The compiler was 8.17, as you can see here. The optimization was yes, because if you look at the hardhat config.ts, the optimization was true. And then we're going to submit this to verify the contract. So it says verification succeeded. So you can know that right now, we have submitted and deployed a contract onto Conflux eSpace. We can now read the contract and write the contract as well. So right now, what we're going to do is, now that we have the contract deployed, we're going to actually publish our app onto the web. We're using Vercel. So we're going to go here. We're going to create a new terminal. And it's very simple. It just says yarn Vercel. So this connects you with your Vercel account. So it says set up and deploy onto Next.js. Say yes. We'll just say Tony's projects. Link to existing is not an existing project. What's your project name? We'll just say Conflux Scaffold repo. We'll just press enter here. So it sets up our project and it deploys it. We'll just press yes here and then just press enter. So this is going to deploy and build, and we can preview it on this link here. So it says this deployment is building. So we're going to wait a bit, but essentially this allows you to share the link to your friends, and they can use their MetaMask to interact with your app itself. Let's just give it a couple minutes. In the meantime, just going to quickly talk about some of the other features of Scaffold ETH that you can use for our Conflux apps. If you recall, there is the testing side. So I think we can look at the test. So all you need to do for the test would be essentially yarn hardhat test. And that test will essentially run and see if they have the right message. So right now it's expecting a message that says building unstoppable apps on Conflux. But we have changed it to Conflux Scaffold, so that's failing the test. But when you first deploy it, it will actually say building unstoppable apps on Conflux. But because we've changed the message, that's why the test has failed. But this is a feature to allow you to write your own test and also test it. So let's check on the deployment side to see what's happening. So it's still deploying. Yeah, so it's super powerful in terms of developing your app. I think once you build the app with the front end, you can actually quickly see how if you wanted to change your contract, you can change your contract, use those pre-made hooks to read and write into that contract, and then deploy it onto Conflux eSpace, because Conflux eSpace is EVM compatible. So it looks like we're almost there. But let's just give it a couple more minutes. But yeah, hopefully, you guys find this useful. Okay, so it's ready. It took 2 minutes. So we're going to visit the thing, and then we're going to connect our actual account. And remember, we can change the greeting. So we can say, thanks for an amazing scaffold. So we're going to pay, a little gas fees. So remember, this is live. And what we should be able to see is it actually interacting with the EVM Conflux blockchain. So here in the Conflux Space Explorer, this will be a new transaction. So we're going to check our transaction. So success. So 26 seconds ago. So we will look at the contract. So 35 seconds ago, we set the greeting. So that's pretty much it. Definitely look through the repo, play around, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks.